This is the hat that I wore walking into the Cotton Bowl on Saturday. And I felt pretty stupid walking out of the Cotton Bowl on Saturday. What a horrendous performance by the Texas defense. I can't even look at it. I can't even wear it right now. A disaster from the Longhorns on Saturday and just a kick to the groin to Texas fans everywhere. The Longhorns come up short in the 2021 Red River Shootout, 55-48, the final score from the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, the highest scoring Texas OU game in history. A thrilling game, arguably the best Texas OU game of all time, one of the best college football games in recent memory. But unfortunately, if you're a Texas fan like me, you came up short. You came up on the losing end. And boy, so much to get into in today's video. I will do a live chat. I wanted to do a live chat before recording a video this week, but just didn't have time. Was honestly too depressed over the weekend to do anything and was busy last night. Today is Tuesday. This video being posted later today, Tuesday, October 12th, 20 and 21. We will do a live chat later this week to talk more about the Oklahoma game and also start to turn the page to Oklahoma State. Another big game coming up for the Longhorns, and they've got to find a way to put this OU game behind them and focus on an undefeated top 15 ranked Cowboys team coming to town this weekend. But today's video will focus on the debacle, the collapse that took place in Dallas this past weekend, 55-48, the final. You know it by now. Texas was up 28-7 in the first half. They were up 41-23 late in the third quarter, and they let it slip away. Oklahoma with 32 points in the final 16 minutes of regulation on Saturday. I wish that was a made-up stat. 32 points for the Sooners in the last 16 minutes. And it all fell apart for Texas relatively quickly. I mean, I felt like I was watching my house burn down from the Cotton Bowl on Saturday. An electric atmosphere. There's nothing like it in college football. And, for the first half, it was a lot of fun being in that building. For the second half, not so much. The other half of the stadium was enjoying it a lot more than we were. Man, where to begin? I mean, we got to start with the defense, guys, and we'll get to Steve Sarkisian and the Texas offense a little bit. Of course, only scoring 10 points in the second half is extremely disappointing, and it takes all three phases of the game to blow a lead like that. Give Oklahoma credit. They had to do everything right to come back and get the win, but Texas also had to do pretty much everything wrong, and that happened in all three phases for the Longhorns as the game wore on Saturday. But look, you score 48 points in a football game, you should win 10 times out of 10. Even in this conference, you score 48 points in a game, put up 500-plus yards of offense, your quarterback throws for 5 touchdowns. You've got to win that football game 10 out of 10 times, and Texas didn't because, well, defensively, they were atrocious, and they had no answer for Caleb Williams. I'll give him credit, an impressive performance by him, but most of this has to do with Texas just being horrendous defensively. The missed tackles continues to be an issue in Austin. Stop me if you've heard that before. The missed tackles were terrible. DBU, school that once held a claim to be in the conversation for DBU. And I get that it's a historic argument, and Texas still has a bunch of history when it comes to secondary play. But, man, over the last 12 years, Texas hasn't been anywhere close to DBU. The secondary play was horrible. I mean, Caleb Williams was just throwing balls up for grabs, and, those are supposed to be 50-50 balls. Oklahoma turned those into 100-0 balls. I mean, they were catching everything. The Texas secondary once again panicked when the ball was in the air on Saturday, and Oklahoma was able to pick up chunk plays because of it. That's been the biggest problem with Oklahoma's offense this year, at least the biggest change from OU offenses in the past under Lincoln Riley versus the 2021 Oklahoma offense. They haven't been able to pick up explosive plays, especially through the air, and they were able to do that on Saturday, a testament to just how bad the Texas secondary was, especially in the second half. Kennedy Brooks ran for 217 yards for 2 touchdowns. I mean, guys, if you would have told me that Oklahoma put up 662 yards of total offense, I would have told you that Texas lost this game by 3 or 4 touchdowns, if not more. The Texas defense was just that bad. The offense was able to do enough, most of it coming in the first half, to make sure this game was close, but the Texas defense gave up 662 yards and, of course, 55 points in this one on Saturday, and just big play after big play after big play for the Sooners. I'm pulling up the game cast just to look at some of the touchdowns that Oklahoma had. The 66-yard run on 4th down for Caleb Williams in the first half. You had the Marvin Mims, what a catch, maybe the catch of the year in college football, the 52-yarder in the corner of the end zone. That was a huge play. Kennedy Brooks had some massive runs. Of course, the 33-yarder just before the buzzer. I mean, how does that happen, guys? How does that happen? How do you not force Oklahoma to kick that field goal in the final seconds there? I mean, when Texas scored the game-tying touchdown with 1:23 left, I knew Oklahoma had enough time to get into field goal range and set up for a game-winning field goal, but you got to make them kick the field goal. And everybody in the entire stadium knew that Oklahoma was running on that last offensive play, right? They just wanted to pick up a few yards and run a little bit of clock and set up for a shorter, more manageable field goal for Burkich. And Kennedy Brooks damn near untouched into the end zone from 33 yards out. Everybody knew it was a run play, and Texas still couldn't stop it. And it was the same look that they had, I think, on that Caleb Williams run, too, that Texas couldn't stop either. So just atrocious, horrible defense from Texas. And Pete Kwiatkowski's got his work cut out for him, guys. I'm not closing the book on PK. You know, his body of work over the course of his coaching career is very, very impressive. But this was far and away his worst performance as a defensive coordinator, regardless of stop. And he's got some work to do to turn things around and try to help Texas find their way to Arlington to get another shot at Oklahoma. I felt like the winner of that football game was on the fast track to get to Arlington for the Big 12 championship game. And Oklahoma got the win. They're undefeated in conference play. They're back into the top 5. It feels like they're on their way once again to AT&T Stadium. Now Texas has to find a way to be the team that plays Oklahoma in that game. But how about this? I got this stat from my old co-host in Austin, Rod Babers. He tweeted this out. The following numbers are the most points, total yards, rushing yards, and yards per rush allowed by a Pete Kwiatkowski defense since he became an FBS defensive coordinator in 2010. 55 points, 662 total yards, 339 rushing yards, 8.3 yards per carry. All of those happened on Saturday against Oklahoma. So whatever way you look at it, whatever way you want to break it down, the worst defensive performance by a Pete Kwiatkowski defense in his entire career. And I'll get on Sark a little bit, right? The play calling a little bit too conservative for my liking in the second half. And there were offensive struggles too. I mean, offensive line penalties killed 3 drives in a row in the second half, which meant Texas was punting it back to Oklahoma and meant the Texas defense was staying on the field a lot. They wore down, obviously, as the game wore along. And look, 10 points in the second half, that's just not good enough. But the story of this game, once again, is the Texas defense just completely collapsing. Once again, and the rush defense, my goodness, guys, the defensive line was supposed to be a strength for this football team. They got worked by an Oklahoma offensive line that had struggled through the first 5 weeks of the season. That was like the big weakness. That was one of the reasons why OU's offense this year had not looked like OU's offense in the past, because their O-line play just wasn't very good. They mauled. They won the battle up front against Texas. And the Texas defensive line, they got worked against Arkansas. They gave up 7.1 yards per carry in the game against the Hogs, and they gave up 8.3 yards per carry and just got pushed around against Oklahoma on Saturday. DeMarvion Overshown's a stud, but he's the only linebacker that Texas has. Luke Brockermeyer's a good story. And against, lesser competition, like weaker teams in the Big 12, he can look good. He can make some things happen. But look, this guy's a former walk-on. He's going up against 4 and 5 stars that Oklahoma has. Like they picked him apart, and he struggled on Saturday. The safety play was bad. You need safeties that can tackle. Texas does not have safeties that can tackle right now. B.J. Foster was responsible in coverage for that Marvin Mims play. Darian Dunn got beat on a deep ball as well. Just bad. Any way you slice it up, guys, any way you break it down, just poor defensive play from Texas. It starts with the coaching staff for sure. It's year 1 for Pete Kwiatkowski. I'm not closing the book on him. And I get that these aren't his players. Like, that can be a little bit of an excuse, but I don't know if it excuses what we saw on Saturday. So Texas has to figure it out. I mean, it was a true freshman quarterback who didn't play a senior year of high school ball who just picked you apart. And Oklahoma's rushing game, which has been terrible at times this season, got everything it wanted and more on Saturday. So got to find ways to turn things around, but just an embarrassing performance by Texas defensively. They couldn't get stops. They couldn't get off the field in the second half. I hate to go through these numbers. I think y'all know these numbers by now, and hearing them again isn't going to help take away the pain of what went down on Saturday. But the largest blown lead in Texas football history, the second largest comeback in Oklahoma football history. I mean, this is a game you have to win. You're up by 21 points. You got to win. And to me, like the 21-point first half lead is less bothersome than the 41-23 late third quarter lead. Like Oklahoma's offense, we know they're capable of putting up points in a hurry and scoring in bunches. So like 28-7, I'm not saying you should lose that game by any stretch, but like it's fathomable to think that you could blow a 28-7 first half lead against a team like Oklahoma and an offense like Lincoln Riley. Hell, Texas blew a 3-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter in 2018 to Kyler Murray before Dicker the kicker hit the game winner in that game. Like that to me is less frustrating than the 41-23 late in the third quarter, because even though the third quarter wasn't much and you didn't do anything offensively in that quarter, like you still had a 3-possession lead with like 2 minutes left in the third quarter and you found a way to blow it. That's just, considering everything, it's the worst late game collapse in Texas football history. And man, Sark, I'm a believer in Sark. We've seen a lot of good things from Steve Sarkisian. But, man, he's like the 2 losses that he's had this year, just embarrassing to rival teams and in that type of fashion, just pathetic, really, really pathetic. And once again, I'm in on him. I'm bought in. I think he'll find ways to turn things around. I think he's the right guy at Texas, but just 2 brutal, brutal losses over the first month and a half of Steve Sarkisian's tenure in Austin. Offensively, guys, I mean, we talked about the defensive line getting work. The offensive line lost its matchup too. Oklahoma's, I think, the best defensive line on Texas's schedule, but this continues to be an issue on the 40 acres, just bad offensive line play. Denzel Okafor was missed, and Denzel Okafor is not a great player by any stretch, but like you had to move Derek Kerstetter to left guard and bring in Andre Carrick at right tackle. That worked against TCU after Okafor went down. Like the O-line was fine in that game, but it did not work on Saturday. Andre Carrick was getting beat time and time again. He actually got demoted. He's not starting for Texas against Oklahoma State, according to the depth chart, at least, that was released by Sark yesterday on Monday. The offensive line was terrible. And, as the game wore on, they got worse. They just couldn't create holes for Bijan Robinson in the second half. The first half they were good, but Texas's opening script was really, really good. They obviously won the matchup early on, and Texas was able to get everything it wanted offensively. But the offensive line, man, just not enough for Bijan Robinson and not enough protection for Casey Thompson in the second half to set anything up. I know Texas had a couple of big plays. Obviously, the big chunk play to Xavier Worthy to tie the game at 48. You needed some time to make that happen, but more often than not, Texas lost the battle in the trenches on Saturday. I say it for every game, but especially for the Oklahoma game. You got to win the battle in the trenches if you're going to beat those guys. And Texas did. And it got worse as the game progressed. And it was a tale of 2 halves on Saturday. So Casey Thompson played really well. 388 and 5 touchdowns. It was a big game for him with the family legacy at Oklahoma. He balled out his best performance, I thought, of his Texas career. And, a big bounce back performance by him after not doing a whole lot against TCU. Now, Bijan had such a good day against the Horned Frogs. Casey didn't need to do a bunch, but still, he did not play well in Fort Worth. He was magnificent. And Xavier Worthy brought him up earlier. What a performance by him. 9 catches, 261 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Maybe the best wide receiver performance in the history of the Texas OU game. And it came from a true freshman. Scored on the first play of the game, scored the game-tying touchdown. Big-time plays for Xavier Worthy as a receiver. Of course, the kickoff decision was not a great one, but a nice bounce back by him to make a couple of plays late for Texas in that football game. Probably put that more on Sark, putting Xavier Worthy out there in that spot. Oklahoma had all the momentum. Xavier Worthy does not return kicks for this football team. You put a true freshman back there instead of more experienced guys like Jamison and Rojo, who normally return kicks for you. And Xavier Worthy, look, ego got in the way. He tried to change the momentum with a big kick return. He was being told to take a knee in the end zone. He caught it like 7 or 8 yards deep. He should have taken a knee, but I don't think he should have been out there in that spot. A couple of special teams blunders for Texas that also contributed to the collapse. takes all three phases, guys. You give Oklahoma credit once again. I mean, they had to do everything right. Caleb Williams made some tremendous plays. The OU receivers made some awesome plays. Kennedy Brooks, obviously, some big-time runs. But it also takes Texas completely falling apart, and that's what went down on Saturday. I'm trying to think what else I need to hit, guys. What did I miss? I'm still hurting. I'm still reeling. And then A&M goes out and beats Alabama later on Saturday, like just twisting the knife for Texas fans. A rough day. A lot of recruits in attendance at the Cotton Bowl, a lot of recruits in College Station. You know, recruits a lot of times pick between Texas A&M, and Oklahoma. They saw Oklahoma look good. They saw A&M look good, and they saw Texas completely embarrass itself on Saturday. What a game. What a game. Sucks to come up on the losing end, but a thriller at the Cotton Bowl. So I think that's it. We'll do a live chat later. I know I'm forgetting a bunch of stuff. I got to get ready for this Astros game. By the way, shameless plug, ESPN Houston, The Wheelhouse, weekdays from 3 to 7 p.m. if you want to listen to me on the radio. ESPN975.com if you're outside the listening area. Appreciate the support. Please like this video. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. I don't think I mentioned that at the start of this video, but thank y'all for the support here. And the discount code BK10 at checkout. I don't know if you want this hat right now. No offense to Last Stand hats. I love Last Stand hats. But I felt like an idiot wearing that hat at the game this weekend with just the horrendous defensive line play for Texas. Or defensive line play, defensive back play, defensive play. Everything was bad on that side of the ball for the Longhorns. PK has his work cut out for him. True freshman quarterback to do that against Texas. Unbelievable. And I don't know if we're ever going to see Spencer Rattler again in Norman. That's a conversation for another day. Heartbreaker. Texas falls to 4-2. They drop to 25th in the AP Top 25. Got to bounce back, though. Oklahoma State coming to town this weekend. The Cowboys undefeated. Texas a 5 to 5.5 point favorite at the time I'm recording this video on Tuesday. We'll talk about that matchup a little bit later, but just frustrating. Frustrating. That could have been a program-building win for Steve Sarkisian and Texas, and instead an epic collapse and a historically bad loss. And Oklahoma rushed the field, which was kind of weird on Saturday, but whatever. They won. All right, that'll do it for today's video, guys. Appreciate the continued love and support. Until next time, y'all stay safe, y'all stay healthy, and hook.